Do not, I repeat, do not listen to this podcast if your favorite college football team is not in the top 10. Locked On Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. And thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Sonny Verma, your host here at Locked On, where I continue to provide you coverage daily. That's right, every single day of the beloved. If you feel nice, just make sure you hit that like button. I ask for nothing else in return. If you might notice, the vibes here, the mood here at Locked On Illini is very positive. And a lot of that has to do with the new rankings are out. On Sunday, both the coaches and AP polls came out. And Illinois checked in at number 9. That's right, number 9. We haven't been this high since, I believe, 2001 is the stat that I saw. And I believe previous to that, it was 1991, if I read that correctly. I think it's safe to say it's unprecedented times for at least this generation of Illini fans. Obviously, this is coming off of a 45-19 victory over the Duke Blue Devils. And, you know, it's arguable whether that game was actually closer than the score might dictate. I'll be talking about later on this week, I'll be bringing on a national expert to talk about the perception of Illinois football now, because it's obvious once you're top 10, this team really can't be ignored any longer. Number 9 tells you that you're legitimately one of the 9 best teams in the country. Now, are they? That can be debated. I can understand, but I think we're at the point now where you can't definitively say that they're not. And if you're an Illini fan, I hope you understand what I'm saying. That's such an amazing feeling. I wanted to open up Monday's episode talking about why I think one of the major reasons the optimism with the Illini fans is so incredibly high, and that is, of course, Hank Beatty. To give you guys a little preface, I know it's a lot of you are basketball fans, so you may not pay as much attention to the football side, so I do try to give you a little background. Coming into this season, we knew this Illinois football team was going to be a very good one. We knew they just came off of a 10-win season, including a victory over South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl, and the expectations were sky high. You're returning about 16 starters from last year's team. A team, again, that I just mentioned, won 10 games last year, but there were 2 holes, at least perceived-wise, on this upcoming football season, and one of them happened to be wide receivers. We knew we were losing Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. Pat Bryant almost set a record for Illinois touchdowns last season. Zachary Franklin was one of the most accomplished wide receivers in all of college football last year, and a big reason that Luke Altmyer was able to make a leap between his years 2 and 3 and become what coming into the season was going to be a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten Conference. I think those 2 guys that he had, he knew he could trust them, and that helped him build his own confidence as a quarterback. Well, this year, even though the wide receiver room itself was very deep and arguably as deep as it's ever been, we were kind of playing that lottery game again. We didn't know which one of the young guys was going to be able to step up and maybe take on the role that a Pat Bryant played last year or a Zachary Franklin played last year. And quite honestly, none of the young guys have done it quite yet, although things looked a lot more promising in week 2. I'll get to that in a little bit later. The main name that jumped out was the guy we probably should have assumed all along, and that is Hank Beatty. Now, Hank's emergence isn't completely surprising. He did have that 90-yard performance against South Carolina last year in the bowl game that I had mentioned. But his rise to what he's become today is kind of very similar somewhat to the story that Pat Bryant had. You're talking about a kid, in Hank Beatty's case, he was a homegrown kid who basically every year seemed to elevate his game a little bit more. Now, I'll be honest, with Hank after his sophomore season, I didn't see star potential. I always thought he could be a very solid cog in this Illinois machine, but we're seeing now that he's not just a role player, that he can absolutely show that he's a game changer. Quickly, to break down his numbers from week 1, he had in that 52-3 victory over Western Illinois, Beatty had 241 all-purpose yards. Obviously, after week one, he was leading the entire nation at that stat. He set a new Illinois single-game punt return yardage record with 133 yards, which broke a mark that had stood since Red Grange set it back in 1923. I said Red Grange. Hank Beatty broke a record set by Red Grange. That's how long it's been. He also had 5 catches for 108 yards, and of course, the 69-yard punt return touchdown, which was not just electrifying. It was one of those that hadn't been done since 2013. PFF graded him at 90.4, which is an elite performance for any individual player. So you're talking in week one, 241 yards, which is a school record. He scored a touchdown, and he got national recognition all in week one. Obviously, it was a fantastic performance, but that was also done against Western Illinois, not exactly the most elite competition. So coming into week two, let's see what kind of bounce back game he would have. And what a game he did have. 128 yards receiving, including another touchdown where he was positioned as the quarterback in a Wildcat formation, and he made a couple nice moves. But just a brilliant call by Barry Lenny Jr., who also is going to get love on this show sometime this week for sure for the game that he called. But again, Hank Beatty once again proved that he is, at this point, established himself as, hey, I'm going to be one of those guys that's going to step up and be the guy that Luke Altmyer needs me to be. And one thing it's safe to say is that his impact is certainly more than just the box score. If you watch these last two games, and particularly you saw the game on Saturday against Duke, you can tell that Luke Altmyer simply trusts Hank to make a play. Very similar to what he did with Pat Bryant last year. Luke knew that if he was in trouble, if he could get in the vicinity of Pat Bryant, he didn't have to make a perfect throw, that Pat would come down with it. And I remember that happening multiple times against Duke as well. Hank wasn't necessarily wide open, but Luke put it in the position where he knew that Hank would come down with it. Now, again, I'll focus a little bit later on the younger wide receivers who I believe are slowly starting to step up, including a guy like Hudson Clement, the transfer we got from Western Virginia. But seeing Hank kind of step into that role is just a huge relief in all aspects, not just because we're wondering whether this wide receiver room was going to be able to keep up with the one of the last couple of years, but also just for emotional relief. As I said to kickstart this segment, and wide receiver room, like that was one of the biggest question marks coming into this season. And while we all had high aspirations and hopes that this team could win 9, 10, 11 games, it could not hit those benchmarks unless somebody stepped up from that wide receiver room. And the fact that it's Hank Beatty, who isn't a newcomer by any stretch, but a guy that at this point, the coaching staff, even the fans, if you've been following his career, and we know Luke Altmyer, you can trust him. I don't think this is a fluke. I said in the post-game show after Western Illinois, I was like, hey, Hank Beatty had a really good game. I listed off the stats earlier today, but can Hank Beatty be the best wide receiver on a championship team? And quite honestly, after seeing his performance against Duke, again, Duke's got a very solid defense. So it's not like he was playing the leatherneck defense from the week before. I can say emphatically, yes, if Hank Beatty is the wide receiver one on this football team, this football team is absolutely capable of winning the 9 games that I projected us to win, or maybe even hit the 10 that some of you in my comment section have been hoping that Illinois could win. And when you listen to Hank and you just hear how humble he is, it's hard not to root for him. Just a couple quotes from this season. He said, "It feels great. It took a lot to get here. A lot of people helped me get here in the first place. If we keep taking it one step at a time, we can do something special." Also, I didn't think I would ever break a record by Red Grange, but I'm just grateful for everybody around me who helped me do it. Again, you just kind of get a snapshot of his humility, his team first personality, and the cultural resonance that we know Bret Bielema has been building in Champaign essentially ever since his arrival. It's not about individual stats with these guys. It's more about theirs and the team identity. And it's not just the wide receiving that he's helped us out on. He's completely changed the game when it comes to special teams. Coming into this year, we weren't 100% sure if Hank Beatty was going to be the guy who's going to be returning these kicks. But now that he has established himself doing that, we see that Beatty being a threat to flip the field and score a touchdown on a kick return, it's not just flashy, it injects energy. It can change the momentum of a game, and it's going to force opponents to alternate their own game plans. And it kind of underscores just how dangerous Illinois has become. Because again, we know you can always count on a solid offense. You can count on a solid defense. You can count on solid special teams. But we hadn't returned a punt for since 2013. And now that is becoming a threat. And again, that's just another thing that opposing coaches are going to have to spend time scouting. And did I mention he broke a record by Red Grange? Something historic, symbolic. It's just nice because Beatty's trajectory feels like the perfect validation of Illinois' continued recruiting and development philosophy. He's a local kid from Rochester, developed in the system. He committed to patience, and now he's being rewarded with a starring role. Bret's message from years back was those little things mean a lot, and those who stick with the program get there. Beatty's emergence isn't just good for him, it's a selling point, of course, for future recruits, both not enrolled in the Illinois program, but also the ones maybe who are younger, who feel like they should be getting a bigger role. It's okay to be patient. You can stick it out here because you know what? Illinois will develop you and you'll eventually get your opportunity. In the locker room, he's the embodiment of perseverance, of humility and culture, because he's not leading by noise. He's simply leading by example. So what does this mean moving forward? Western Michigan is on Saturday. And yeah, we're, I believe, a 28-point favorite. So Saturday may or may not be the most challenging of games. But once Western Michigan is done, then the schedule gets drastically more difficult. And we're going to be needing to compete as a team at a higher level. And that includes all the individual units on this football team, but in particular, the wide receiver room. It's going to be nice because now oppositions are going to have to account for Hank Beatty. They're going to have to account for him not just on offense, but also on special teams. And that alone is going to open up the rest of the offense, for, give space to a guy like Justin Bowick. You can attack more matchups and you get a little bit more flexibility when it comes to game planning. And it's nice to know internally as Illini fans, and I'm sure the coaching staff, that we don't have to keep wondering who the guy is. I think we're comfortable saying that it's going to be Hank Beatty, and then who's going to be the second guy. And we can be a little bit more patient because we know we got at least one there. And let's be honest, if Beatty continues to keep this up, he's not just going to have a recurring role right here on Locked On Illini episodes. He's a plausible Paul Hornung Award contender, which, by the way, he's already on the watch list. Bottom line is we came into 2025 holding our breath when it came to the wide receiver room. And now we get to exhale a little bit with excitement. Hank Beatty is turning relief into optimism. And that's why this season could be different. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a last-minute project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHColleges for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pull up Game Time every time I'm thinking about going to a game. I see the price and I click on the button so I can see exactly what the view from my seat is going to be. If I like it, I'll go ahead and purchase a ticket. It makes it that easy. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go. Download Game Time today. And welcome back. I did want to give a special thank you to all of you over the weekend. At least on the YouTube side, we hit 3,400 subscriptions. Again, 16 months this channel has been around. The numbers that we're doing as Illini fans is, I believe, even surprising the Locked On Network. This is a rabid fan base. We all know this. We know this is a passionate fan base. But the insane amount of growth that this channel has had has completely shocked everybody, and including me. But it actually, in a way, doesn't surprise me because I realize just how great of a community that we have. And it's a nice to know that we're bringing so many Illini fans together. And I can't wait to one day reach 3,500 and maybe 4,000 one day. Who knows? I just want to give you guys a special thank you. As I usually do, after the game is over on Saturday, I basically take the rest of the day to hang out with family. And then at night, once the kids are gone to bed, I rewatch the game. And depending on whether I have the all 22s in by then or not, I still want to I scan the game over and I say that I watch the game knowing what the ultimate result is going to be, because then I can take my emotions out and I can just analyze the game for what it is. So I wanted to go through real quick and just kind of give grades for each position group. Let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree with me. I'm very open to interpretation, so I want to hear your guys' thoughts for sure. We'll start off with the quarterback room, where I'm going to ultimately give Luke Altmyer a grade of an A-. We know he finished 22 of 31 for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns. And quite honestly, there was a lot of noise coming into this game between Luke Altmyer and first Manny Diaz, a guy who he had historically bad performance in the first half a couple of seasons back, throwing 4 interceptions against Penn State. I feel like every single show that I came on this last week to preview that game always wanted to bring up that performance. And so Luke was able to validate himself a little bit. And I'm going to talk about this in a future episode. I think he kind of had somewhat of a legacy game. And I'll, again, expound on those thoughts a little bit later. But he played a great game. And secondly, he was the better quarterback on the field. I feel like a lot of the conversation coming into that game was about the quarterback he was going up against, Darren Mensah, Duke's $4 million quarterback, who I definitely saw why he's valued so incredibly high. I think he's going to be a very good, not just college football quarterback, but I think he has the potential to be a very good professional quarterback as well. But on Saturday, I don't think there's really any doubt that Luke Altmyer was the better quarterback. Not that he was perfect. In particular, in that first half, he took 4 sacks. A few of them were on him. Again, he seems to be getting a little jittery, as we all are, because it seems like that offensive line that we were all so comfortable with bringing back, we brought every single guy back. We thought that was a good thing. But similar to what's happened last year and the year before, for whatever reasons, the offensive line is having arguably the slowest start of any of the units on this football team. And again, I'll get to that a little bit later. He looked rough in that first half, but quite honestly, he still had 2 touchdowns. And he had just a pinpoint NFL level throw to Justin Bowick, which was originally ruled a touchdown, but ultimately the ball was settled at the 1-yard line when it saw that Bowick had the ball had gone out of bounds at the 1-yard line. And then he had another fantastic throw and an NFL caliber catch by Cole Rusk later on in the half, which those 2 plays in a half of chaos where Illinois simply did not look good. Luke came through with just really elite level plays. And so I'm going to give him an A- for the game. Next up, we go to the running backs, and the running backs was hard. I think I'm being nice when I say this. I'm giving them a B-. And if we're going to be talking about the first 3 quarters, that grade may very well be a D. We were getting very little help from the running game. And I'm talking about all three. You're talking about Caden Fagan, Khalil Valentine. It's hard to say anything about Aiden Lawfrey, even though he didn't do much on the field. We found out that he was dealing with some sort of injury. Now, I haven't gotten much feedback on how long this injury is supposed to be, so we'll see if he plays against Western Michigan or not. But, ultimately, Caden Fagan did score a touchdown, and Khalil Valentine had a really nice one, which I believe he scored from 23 yards. And it was in the fourth quarter where the running game seemed to have settled down. Now, did it settle down because the offensive line figured it out and the running backs were able to find holes and do what they're supposed to do? Or, and this is what I'm suspecting, was Duke simply worn down? That, as talented of a group as Duke is, you saw how athletic they are in that first half. You saw how fast that they are in the first half. But you knew in a war of attrition that there was no way that Illinois was going to lose that battle. And I do think that just the insane amount of depth that Bret Bielema has built within this Illinois program, by the end of the third quarter, essentially, and all throughout the fourth, Duke just really did look worn down. And Caden and Khalil were able to take advantage and finally turn things around, which from what looked like was a really abysmal running back performance. The wide receivers, I'm also going to give an A-2. And trust me, I'm relieved when I have to say that because, as I mentioned, one of my biggest concerns from that week one was the performance of those wide receivers. It seemed like we knew Hank Beatty did what he did, but the other guys just weren't getting the separations. They just weren't running the precise routes that you would want them to run against that level competition. Well, they stood up and they really took care of the Duke Blue Devils when it came to that. I already talked about Hank Beatty, 128 yards, including scoring as a quarterback. But Justin Bowick had another touchdown himself, and he continues just to be the red zone preference of Luke Altmyer, which I kind of called. I'm going to pat myself on the back right here. He was my flag player this offseason, and he's kind of fulfilling the exact sort of vision I had for Justin once they brought him in. But also, Colin Dixon hauled in his first career score in that second half as well. Again, you really saw college football wide receivers looking like college football wide receivers against Duke, and that was a huge improvement from what I saw the week before. And my concern with that wide receiver room is diminishing by the week. And trust me, that's a good thing. Malik Elzy did have what arguably could have been a drop in that first half. But again, it's good that it was dropped because if it wasn't dropped, it would have been ruled a fumble. But Malik came back later in the game with just a fantastic grab. He essentially grabbed it right off the ground. And it's a catch that, as talented as I think Malik is, I think it's a catch that he's not capable of making. So seeing him do that makes me feel really good about Malik's prospects moving. Tight ends was kind of hard to grade because they didn't exactly do much. Now, Cole Rusk looked like a wide receiver on the one catch that he had for a touchdown. And again, congrats to Cole. Obviously injured all of last year. He missed the entire season to come back and finally make an impact on the field for the Alumni this year. It's nothing but a good, feel-good story. But he did have, as I mentioned, an 8-yard touchdown. But beyond that, it was just a lot of blocking going on. Now, PFF graded them out pretty well, so that's why I'm not going to give them too low of a grade. But, it is what it is. I think maybe C+, B- in that range. Because they scored, I'll bump it up to B-. And next up, we'll talk about the offensive line. The offensive line was kind of hard to grade. I'm going to go with my gut instinct, and I'm going to give them a C-, which might be a little bit lower than they deserve. First half was just really rough to watch. And again, it caused a lot of concern, particularly in our Talk Illini Discord. By the way, the link should be in the description. We have like 315 Illini fans all across the country. And man, that place was buzzing during game day. We have a game day channel where we're just kind of all talking and venting to each other as we watch the plays happen. But we had a bunch of stalled drives. We had J.C. Davis getting schooled in that first half. It just wasn't a very good performance, but they did kind of change things around in the second half. Now, did things look like they were changed around because the scheme changed, because Barry Lunny Jr. and Luke Altmyer got together and they changed how they were going to run that offense? Maybe, but the offensive line did look noticeably different in the second half, noticeably better. And again, whether that had to do with their performance or just simply wearing down Duke. I don't know for sure, but for now, I'll just give him a C- as a grade. And that you certainly hope that that's going to be the lowest grade that that unit has for the rest of the season, because otherwise, again, as I mentioned, the competition is going to get a lot tougher after this past week or after next week. And so they're going to have to step it up. Next up, I'll go to the defensive line. And the defensive line, I'm going to give a B+2. Once again, just an extremely strong performance by Tamiwa Durajai. I read on Orange and Blue News that, did you know Illinois is fourth in Big Ten in rushing defense and through the first two games? And again, that has a lot to do with how well that up front is playing. Durjai and James Thompson Jr. Look, we all held our breath when James got hurt in the game, but luckily he was able to come back, and James posted, I believe, 4 tackles and 2 quarterback hurries, and he was the highest graded on the defensive line when it comes to PFF. It's the defensive line I never had concerns about, but let's just say right now I'm at the point where I'm still pleased with the way that they performed, at least in those first 2 weeks. Linebackers, I'll also give a B to. Gabe Yakis didn't have much when it comes to accounting stats, but Gabe Yakis's presence was felt. He had a very key strip, which led to a turnover for Illinois, and he's a wrecking ball on that field, and I'm really looking forward to see him becoming a national name. Daniel Brown had how do I say this nicely? Just not a very smart play at the end of the first half, where basically he committed a penalty, which ultimately led to Duke being able to score and making it only a 1-point game coming into halftime. But Bret Bielema said that, hey, Daniel knows that he made a mistake, and I believe Bret calls these teaching moments, and he believes in Daniel Brown, and so we just hope that this was just one of those mistakes of this young man's career, and that he's going to be able to get past it at some point. Big respect to Malachi Hood, who had a strong performance. Dylan Rosiak got hurt, and he missed some substantial time. So Hood was able to come in and play the most he's ever played in a game. And he had a very solid, I believe, Hood had 4 tackles, and I believe he recovered a fumble, if I recall. The secondary is where I'm most curious about your guys' thoughts, because I've listened to other content creators out there, and what I saw is apparently different than what they saw. I think that maybe outside Luke Altmyer and the quarterback room, that the secondary was the best performing unit of the entire team. Yeah, they gave up 352 passing yards, but if you're in our Talk Illini Discord, I said it multiple times throughout the game that, hey, Hood had to either throw it away or just get minimal gains after having all day to make a decision because of the coverage. Those defensive backs were not letting the Duke guys get wide open. And sure, Xavier Scott got beat for a touchdown, but that was more of a red zone play. I'm talking about just throughout the game. I believe that the defensive backs just did a fantastic job. And again, I want to give all credit to Aaron Henry. Aaron Henry continues to really excel against really good quarterbacks. And Mensah is a really good quarterback who, again, when you look at his final box score stats, they look fine. But he really wasn't as effective as he needed to be in order to elevate a team like Duke over Illinois. So I want to give love to the secondary. Personally, I think they were the best unit on Saturday. I think some other people disagree. That's why I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts. And finally, I'm going to give special teams an A. Also, David Alano just continues to be Mr. Consistency, which is just nice when you never have to worry about your kicker, especially at the college level. Every time I'm done watching Illini games and I'm watching it at some other college football team, and I see just how stressful the kicking game can be, I'm so grateful that we don't seem to have this issue very often here with Illinois. And don't forget that even on a punt, we were able to Duke's receiver dropped the punt, and we were able to cause a huge turnover, get really good field position, and ultimately capitalize on that. So special teams, A. Again, those are my final takeaways. I want to know your guys. Let me know in the chat what grades you give for individual units. As I'm saying it, if I'm talking about Luke Altmyer, if you're in that part of the video, tell me what your grade is. And when I move on to running backs, wide receivers, so-and-so, I'm very curious how you thought that the team performed on Saturday. I got a question for all of you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, I said hat. For me, it would be one provided by the game. Now, I don't have one currently on, but I've seen what they look like, and I know I'll be receiving one very soon. I can't wait to show that off because they aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price that they did back then. You use code when you use code locked on, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. Simply head to thegamecaps.com, grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design, and use code locked on for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. And welcome back. I did want to say, moving forward, I think I'm going to be bringing on a contributor who, in this segment on Monday, the third segment, we're going to be basically highlighting the performances of the Illini in the NFL. Some of the most recent players that were drafted. Talking about Pat Bryant, Chase Brown, Casey Washington had a very solid game on Sunday. We're going to do kind of a recap for some of you guys who do like to follow along with what's going on with our alumni in the pros. And so I'll be doing that starting probably next week moving forward. So I hope you're looking forward to that. I can't help but give love to Katie Holton once again. The Illinois soccer team, the women's soccer team, ladies and gentlemen, is 7-0. They just had a 6-0 victory against Valparaiso. That means this season, the Illini women's soccer team has scored 15 goals and they've only allowed one. Again, I want to talk all Illini athletics on the show because if these athletes are proud enough to wear the orange and blue on their shirts, then I absolutely want to acknowledge their hard work and their successes right here on a show built for athletes like them and for viewers like you. So again, special shout out to the women of Illinois soccer, a 7-0 head start. I believe I saw a stat that the last 4 or 5 years, Illini women's soccer is averaging 6 wins. Just under 7. And so the fact that they've already beat that in Katie's literal first 7 games of her career here at Illinois, it's just incredible. Remember, it's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. We're running a little late, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Again, we're going to have a whole bunch of content for you this week. Number 19 in the country, guys. We don't know how long this will last. Let's just soak it all in and enjoy this together. In particular, right here on Locked On Illini, I'll have shows for you every single day. And, of course, the post game on Saturday. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.